Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first WYSBDotMe podcast, or WYSP, if you will. I did happen to name this Where's Your Shitty Podcast, because everyone and their mother has a podcast. So when it comes out that I'm going to start a podcast, or that we start a podcast, it seems a little bit cringe. But hopefully we keep at it, and we work out the kinks, and this is something that can be enjoyable for everybody. I'm joined by two special guests, two authors of WYSBDotMe, although they are more than just authors. I'm joined here by Mr. Paul Blase and Miss Megan Moore. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing well.
I'm doing excellent, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, so as far as introductions, I just wanted to do something a little bit deeper than, hey, how are you guys doing? And then the person says, oh, I'm doing good, or I'm doing fine, and then that's the end of it, right? So one of the things that we did back when I was, I guess you could say, getting help, we did this thing where we went through and we talked about how we were doing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, which I think is a useful exercise. And Paul, we're going to start with you. When we actually start the show, we're going to start with you with your first piece, Deadman's Meatloaf. So I'm going to throw it to Megan. Megan, how are you doing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually?
Well, physically, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Well, okay, so to answer that, I'd probably say that I'm on a scale from maybe 7 of 1 to 10. No complaints about work, although, it's against company policy to really talk about work. Just saying. My home life looks as though there's probably a struggle. But all kidding aside, I'm actually more blessed than at this point in my life. But thanks for asking. And yourself?
Physically, I guess I'm going to tie this in with spiritually here, and I guess I'll get your guys' take on this. But physically, I said I do my best to practice prayer and meditation these days, and one of the prayers I said recently was, if there's anybody out there suffering, could you please lift that suffering out, and if you need a place to put it, then I'll gladly take it. Now, the next morning, I woke up extremely ill. Now, that could be, obviously, that could be a coincidence. It's the winter. People are getting sick. But, how should I know? That is an odd coincidence for me to wake up like that, right? And I had texted my sponsor about it. I said, hey, this is what I prayed for, and this is what happened. And he told me, how about next time you pray that God just heals them? And I said, yes, but I'm not exactly sure that's how that works. I don't think, there's no such thing as no suffering or no pain. I really believe that if I'm going to pray that suffering be lifted out of somebody, then that needs to go somewhere. Obviously, certainly I'm not going to say a prayer that goes, hey, will you please lift suffering out of somebody that I particularly like, and can you move that to someone I particularly don't like? You know what I mean? So I think I would rather take that burden on myself, and I think that's part of the symbolism or part of the representation of Jesus on the cross. Now, this isn't a religious podcast or anything like that, but there's symbolism is the point in those things. And so, physically, as you can tell, as I cough my way through this little tangent, I haven't been feeling that good, but I don't know. So that's kind of how I've been doing physically, I guess. Although, I met Paul, obviously, when we were playing hockey. As far as being in shape or whatever, I feel pretty good physically. I feel probably like I'm in better shape than I was 12 years ago when I met Paul. But, so I guess that's my physical well-being. Emotionally, I used to think that emotionally and mentally were kind of the same thing. But not really, right? Now, I've kind of since then changed my opinion. And mentally, I guess now, so I stand at 616 days of consecutive sobriety, which is great. However, I get caught in this trap. I wrestle with things at the end of the night and going, well, you're 616 days of consecutive sobriety, and what do you have to show for it? And I really think that, so here's a spiritual aspect of it. If I could draw it up, I wouldn't be wrestling with that, right? So there's clearly something else in play, and I think that that's some of these forces trying to pull me back. And I guess I'll end emotionally. You know, I keep coming back to the opposite of happiness is not sadness. The opposite of happiness is hopelessness. And, you know, I stand today, I don't have any, I'm not hopeless. Well, there's definitely hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm not unhappy, but I guess you could say sadness, but content at the same time. I think that's what I've come to learn over the last 616 days is that emotions come and go, and really what you're looking for is to be content. So there's my tangent. Paul, I guess I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, first off, man, you know, congratulations on the 616 days. You know, I know that's extremely difficult to do. You know, obviously, yeah, I think everybody knows somebody, if they haven't themselves been afflicted by, you know, by addiction. So, you know, just seeing someone like yourself, you know, putting your best foot forward and, you know, kind of making the best of all of that, I think that that's, you know, very admirable and definitely very happy for you. But beyond that, I guess to answer the questions, you know, physically, you know, I'm kind of in the same boat you are. My son has actually been passing a little, you know, chest cold around to everybody. So I downed a hot tea with some honey before coming onto this in hopes of getting rid of my cough. So yeah, you know, feeling a little bit under the weather, but you know, all told, you know, I'm alive, man. I'm alive. I'm fed. I got a roof over my head. You know, there's people that got it a lot worse than me. So I, you know, I take, you know, I don't take that for granted. And then, as far as, you know, spiritually, I feel like I'm in a really good place. You know, I feel like I, you know, understand to some degree my life's purpose. You know, I think, you know, looking for more, you know, as I guess we'll go into, with some of, the articles, you know, looking for a more, I guess, direct answer, something that's a little bit more, you know, concrete, but generally I know where, you know, what plans, you know, God has for me and kind of like how I'm moving forward. Emotionally, afflicted at times, you know, sometimes I battle with, you know, obviously little bits of depression and everything else, and that just kind of, you know, comes and goes. There's different things that pop up from, you know, day-to-day life, you know, that makes you a little bit, you know, you know, kind of, you know, it's ups and downs. Some days you'll wake up and you'll be, you know, extremely happy. Other days you'll wake up and, you know, just kind of on the wrong side of the bed. So yeah, I mean, overall, you know, I think, I'm in a good place moving forward. I still know there's a lot of work to be done, but just kind of attack it day by day.
Yeah, that's good. So you bring up an interesting point. I think that you and Miss Megan kind of both touched on it. I know Miss Megan said that on a scale of 1 to 10, she feels like a 7. And it's kind of interesting. I was reading a book by Mark Manson. It was, I think it's called Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. And what he said is, if you ask people how they feel on a scale of 1 to 10, inevitably and unfailingly, they say 7. And I kind of, if you ask me how, even though, you know, I kind of got this out of what you said, Paul, even though emotionally some days are good, some days are bad, if you ask me on any given day how I felt on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I have to say 7. And that's a good number. And I think I have to be aware that, you know, 7 is good, and I should be grateful that, as you said, there's a roof over my head. You know, I can go to work. I got a car. I have things that I need. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, and I think a good analogy. You know, we're both sports guys. A good analogy for that is, you know, if you look at baseball players, right? If they hit the ball 1 out of every 3 times for their entire career, they're going to the Hall of Fame. Then they'll be considered one of the greatest hitters of all time. If we wake up feeling like, you know, two-thirds of the days that we live, if we wake up feeling good, you know, I mean, that's a Hall of Fame life. You know, I mean, I think, you know, 6 or 7 out of 10, I think is a really good way to look at it. Things could always be better, but I think a lot of times it could be a lot worse.
I agree, bud. Okay, so with all the pleasantries out of the way, let's start the show for real. I wish I had like a drop that says, you know, welcome to the program or whatever, but we'll get that in time. So the first piece, so we're going to recap and dissect the articles that were written on WYSBDotMe from 12/5 to 12/15 of 2021. And the first one up on that list is Mr. Paul Blase's introductory piece, Deadman's Meatloaf. Now, Paul, so these things aren't long, and I figured we could read them on air. Do you want to do the honors and read your own piece?
Yeah, sure. I can go ahead. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, I'll probably stop after each paragraph just to kind of, see if anybody has any, any input or any questions. That's kind of the, benefits of being on a podcast is, we can kind of go off on these little tangents. So that being said, following along on the, page here, the opening cap is a picture of me when I was playing hockey over in Romania. I played professionally overseas for 3 years. I played parts of 2 seasons here in the United States. And then continuing down on it, we look at that's my childhood home. I moved in with my father when I was about about 8 or 9. And that was our house. There's a big house behind it that wasn't there when I grew up. So fortunately, we had a lot that went from one street to the next. But really, that's where whenever I got in trouble, there's plenty of yard work to do. We had those trees back there, so it was just kind of pointlessly raking leaves. You hear about people moving a pile of bricks from one place to the other, and that's pretty much what it was. Like there was a never-ending amount of that. But yeah, that was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 550 square feet. You go, it looks a little bit different. This is a Google Maps picture of it, from when I was there, but you could literally walk in the front door and like 10 steps you're out the back. I mean, it was a tiny little house. But yeah, let's get into it. So it says, my name is Paul. If you met me in the past few years of my life, you'd hardly know me, hardly know the fiber of my being. Part of that is because of the journey that my life has taken me to get where I am right now. That right now is here, talking to you, sharing my unique perspective on life for the What's Your Story Bro blog alongside my good friend Josh. That being said, I want to thank Josh for having me on board. We met 13 years ago in Portland, Oregon as 2 hockey players from opposite sides of the country chasing their dream. And although we haven't seen each other in the flesh since 2010, we've always been in touch with one another, whether it was discussing sports, music, life, or reminiscing the good old days. Whether I've said it before or not, I hope he knows that I value his friendship, and I'm glad to be here helping this blog and adding some new takes and perspective on life. So yeah, obviously, Josh, that's true. We met in Portland, River City Jaguars.
That's right. We're about to blow the fuck up. Boom, boom. What was the thing that we came up with?
God, we have so. What's funny though is when I finished that paragraph. And this is something that we may be able to touch into. We're not going to get too deep into it, but I'll never forget when we were living in Vancouver, Washington, which is right across the river from Portland. That one night, there was that crazy chick that you met on MySpace, I think it was. And she dropped flour and jalapenos on your Honda Civic.
Yeah, that was the... Oh, is that funny, Miss Megan? That was the.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That was the second time that I had been catfished.
and he really was too. I mean, that was 100% a catfish. And then probably the other most memorable moment I have with Josh was when we were going to go to a Portland Winterhawks game. Excuse me. We're going to go to a Portland Winterhawks game, and so we're driving down by the Rose Garden, and there's some homeless lady, and Josh, you were smoking cigarettes at the time. I don't know if you still do. There's this homeless lady, like, asking people for a cigarette or asking for money. He straight up says to a homeless lady, he says, "Hey, can I bum a cigarette?" Like, how are you going to ask a bum if you can bum something?
Listen, it's just a flip of the tongue, Pat.
Hey, we were 18, 19 years old. This was a different time. Different time.
That's great.
Oh, yes. Before we continue, Paul, Miss Megan, you got anything on? Because I know out here, where we live in Tennessee, for the people listening, me and Miss Megan both live in Tennessee, and when we drive, it's like a beautiful brick house and the next house is some sort of trap house. And I don't know, Mr.
Yes.
What was it like when you grew up? Give a little background on where you're from.
So I grew up in a small town about 45 minutes west of Nashville called Dixon, Tennessee, which the town of Dixon is in the Dixon County. I grew up there. I left as soon as I turned 18. It was not like that whenever I was growing up. It's recently actually started becoming that way. Like you stated, you can drive by one huge, large, nice, swanky home, and then, across the street it could be a trap house or Section 8 housing, or it's the ghetto. I have seen that in multiple places, not just one, here recently, especially in Nashville, like off of Rosa Parks Boulevard. One of the most expensive places to live is on the left side of the road, and Section 8 housing is literally across the street. So that's something that's recent. But where I grew up in a small home. It might have been maybe one room larger than the home that Paul grew up in. I know exactly. I had two parents. But I knew exactly what it was like to grow up without having money, or, grow up and going to school and looking at other children that did not have, or looking at the children that had more than I did. So I can really relate throughout his story with that. I could really be empathetic towards him, for that reason. But yeah, by what you're stating, yeah, that's something recent. I'm not sure whether they're just trying to kind of like eventually get all of the ghettos and Section 8 housing or trap houses, kind of more in the swanky way, or renovate it to look swanky, because they have done that in Charlotte Pike. I don't know if you've noticed, like the Section 8 housing is nicer than most of the homes I've ever lived in, and it's actually Section 8 homes. It's quite different, but I have definitely seen that.
I haven't hardly spent any time in Nashville other than just B&A, going to California and back. But people have said that. What you're saying, I have noticed that, or I've heard that from other people. All right, Paul. So moving on, paragraph 2 here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised on Long Island, New York. I grew up extremely poor in my family, particularly my dad did an amazing job of shielding me from it. When I say we were poor, I mean we were in a single-parent household, one of the most expensive places in the country, with my dad on fixed disability income, $500. I just went over all of that. We used to have our food donated from the local church pantry. My dad was resourceful enough to allocate meat from a close friend that owned a butcher shop, and he always found a way to make the fun out of the simplest things. We would go down to the local river, watch people canoe and kayak while eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches. We would go for walks at the local nature preserve. Hell, even for Halloween, he would make a meatloaf shaped in the form of a dead body with tomato paste on top and a small potato wedge out of the middle, and he called it Deadman's meatloaf. So that's true. I don't really know where we got it from. I want to say that there was because we used to go to the local library to rent videotapes and stuff when that was still a thing. And I think we got like a Halloween cookbook, and I think that's where it came from. But yeah, and that's the thing too, is that both of my parents, they both kind of came up from nothing. My mom is getting ready to retire here in June, and she started out as a substitute custodian with the Youth Corps back in early 1980s, and she trailblazed her way through her career. She became a substitute custodian. She became the first full-time female custodian at the school district. She first female head custodian, first female chief custodian. Then she became a district-wide administrator, or supervisor rather, in the buildings and grounds. And she was the first at everything. And now, there's basically two people above her. It's basically her supervisor and the superintendent. So, over the course of 40 years, trailblazing that much, I got to see that firsthand, as well as like with my dad. My dad was, he came back, he was in the military for 9 years. And I'm going to touch up on a lot of that. Excuse me. But he, he was the same way. He worked at as a warehouse guy, for a printing company, and worked his way up to, supervisory positions. and ultimately, came to become a purchasing agent, an executive, straight up from the bottom. And unfortunately, he was only in that position for about 4 to 6 months before he got into a car accident. He was hit 60 miles an hour in the rear at a dead stop. So, never got cleared to go back to work.
Do Paul, what it makes me think about? Now, I can't relate to to coming up with hardly any money. I was very fortunate in that regard, as that I was super privileged, and I kind of grew up in a family that did have money. However, all that means is now I have to learn the lesson of how valuable money really is. And I think that, maybe you could, maybe you feel this way, that you learn how valuable money is early on.
I wouldn't say the value of that. I think, see, that, and that's kind of like where it like, differentiated, excuse me, was that, like everything, it was weird because like as everything was starting to like finally turn around is when, like the car accident happened and everything. And then shortly after that is when he got, custody of me. And it was, like I said, it was just kind of, how would I say it? It was kind of like, as things were starting to look up, there's like the reset button got pressed. So basically, I wouldn't say it was the value of money, but it was, he more or less preached the value of like time and the things you do and the people you do it with, was like, but just looking back, like the things that we Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I said maybe not the value of money, but maybe the value of hard work.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And especially like into my, because after that, obviously my dad was, on fixed income. So he didn't do anything until after we were finished, playing hockey on the West Coast, in which case he cashed in, took a lump sum and opened up his sports bar. But yeah, like with my mom, I got to see her move up the ranks, even into my adult life. I mean, she's still working again, she's retiring in June. So, definitely you hear people that kind of, that say, oh, well, hard work's a scam. You're only benefiting your employer, this and that. But I'm sitting here like I've seen my own family members literally come up from absolutely nothing and make something of themselves and set something up for their futures and the future of their families. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, but I do want to especially reiterate that, like, the way that I was raised was like, I didn't understand how dire the situation was until I was much older. And that's because there was such a importance placed on like, spending time together. It was always about who you were with and what you were doing. It was never how many presents were under the tree. It was the fact that there was a present under the tree,
Right. Miss Megan, do you got anything on that?
Absolutely, yes. I really commend his dad for being that way. Not that I hold anything against my parents, but myself growing up without any money, I saw the struggle that my parents went through with the money, and I saw how stressful it was at all times to make ends meet, just every week, just to have put food on the table. However, unlike Paul's dad, who was awesome, considering that you didn't know, Paul, what you had stated, that you didn't know or until later on the struggles that he was actually going through, because they were putting more emphasis on, who you were around and the quality of time rather than, the money that it took to actually do it. My parents made it very known, how much money we had left or how much money they had gotten paid that week or how much money, it was going to take to feed us the rest of the week, and if we didn't have enough. So especially around Christmas time, it was always a stressful time. It's still, even to this day, it is still stressful to me, even though I have a good job. I have a little bit of money in my pocket, a whole lot more than my parents had made. It still is extremely, extremely stressful time for me, just because I can still feel the pain of the stress that they had when I was a child, and it has really followed me up into my adult years. So I really commend your dad for being that type of person that could shelter you from that and make it unknown, but yet it still be there.
Well, before I kick it back to you, Paul, you can comment on what Miss Megan said. But yeah, that's really interesting that you bring that up. And what it makes me think about is what the youth of America today. And I think sometimes that they know, or they're being exposed to information that they probably should not be being exposed to. So anyway, I'm going to kick that back to you, Paul. If you got anything on what Miss Megan and I said,
definitely with what Miss Megan said there. I kind of noticed that was like maybe that's like a cultural phenomenon, because as we'll get into, I ended up moving to South Carolina when I was 13. So, I really did notice that kids were, they were very aware of their family's financial situations, that, and growing up in New York, and I don't know if that's like a cultural thing or maybe it was just kind of in my own little bubble, but, that wasn't things that anybody, like you didn't know who everybody, someone would have to be like a really significant family for you to know anything like that. But yeah, I'm going to kind of go through a couple paragraphs here just because we covered most of that, like in just what we just said.
Yeah.
So simply put, no matter what it was, my dad found a way to disguise our struggle with something fun. After he got custody of me, he pushed me to excel in school. I went from a failing and undisciplined student to an honor roll student who finished in the top 20 of my graduating class. When it came to hockey, he pushed me to be the best that I could be. He wouldn't let mediocre stand, whether it was training on the ice or off the ice. In fact, he believed in my ability so much that we came within a few hours of being evicted from our house because he used mortgage payments to pay for my hockey. This was information that I wasn't privy to until I was nearly out of high school. As I said, I never had any clue how dire our financial burden was. I would have to thank him for that, not only for disguising that, but for showing me what pulling yourself up by the bootstraps looked like. He was a soldier in the U.S. Army serving in the 1st Infantry Division. I received plenty of tough love, but upon arriving home, he took whatever job he could get. He is known as Smokey, and one of my favorite Smokeyisms was him telling me, I don't care if I have to sit on the street corner selling pencils for 10 cents a piece. I'll always make sure my family's provided for. And he sure as hell he did. He started as a warehouse worker and worked his way up to an executive position before being hit at 60 miles an hour in the rear at a dead stop, rendering him disabled. When we moved to Charleston, South Carolina in April of 2004, it was for the first time I ever knew what it was like to be middle class. I felt rich, like stupid rich. We sold our home in New York, bought the home in South Carolina in cash. His disability income was well above the cost of living in South Carolina at the time, and I started to notice how underprivileged I was in New York. We went to the local ice rink, and I got fitted for all new hockey gear. No more using equipment that we bought secondhand when I was 9. I was 13 when we moved. We could afford to go out to dinner. We could afford to go to museums, the aquarium. I was finally able to get the shoes and the clothes that I wanted, and it was eye-opening. So, yeah, that's when we moved down there, I was still wearing skates from when I was 9. I think at age 13, I think I was in like a size 6 shoe, and I was wearing like size 2 skates. My feet were literally balled up, but it was all I had. And we got those from Play It Again Sports, which was a secondhand store. I was still wearing shin guards from when I was like 7, 8 years old. They like covered my knees and like half of my shin. Gloves had holes in them and stuff. My helmet was too small, but it was all we had and we couldn't afford it. And, Josh, as you know, hockey's an expensive sport. Nowadays you get top of the line skates that cost you almost $1,000. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bro. So I think about that sometimes. So considering your upbringing and what you're telling us today on the show, when we played together, but you're coming into a locker room full of kids that are, I want to say, kind of like me, pretty privileged in a way. You come from a lot of money, whereas so it's a kind of take on a different personality when it's like that, right? And I think about what you were. I think you were a bit of an older soul, right? Wouldn't you agree with that? And whereas me and some of the other teammates that we had, what we were thinking about is, where's the next party? Where's the next rager? Or how am I going to lose my virginity or whatever? But that wasn't you, was it?
No. I'm pretty sure you remember, you know, because we used to practice like hella early in the morning, and, you know, when we got back from practice or the gym or whatever, you know, you guys would fucking have me make breakfast. I was like one of the only ones that knew how to cook in there, you know? So it was like, you know, that was like one of those things where, you know, where it's like I started to kind of really notice that, like, you know, I really did grow up different than a lot of people. You know, it's like not many 18-year-olds can just like straight up like, okay, I'm going to make French toast, I'm going to make an omelet, I'm going to, you know, do this and that. You know, and there's also another funny story when we were in Dusty's house, and, you know, Dusty was the guy who was like our host family. You remember when I put dish detergent in the dishwasher, and all the bubbles came out, and he almost flipped it. He flipped his shit. But the thing is that kind of like goes back to my upbringing, right?
You never had one, did you?
Never had one. Didn't know. I didn't know the difference between the soaps.
Me either. Yep. Yep.
Well, what do you think? You got anything else?
No. I mean, I'm just listening to him, and I'm like, this is so my life. Well, besides the hockey, never played hockey in my life. I don't even believe I've ever been on a pair of ice skates or been ice skating. Maybe once. I think once, and I didn't do so well. So, but other than that, it sounds a lot like my life.
It's not big out here in the South, is it? It's about.
It is not.
Duval.
No.
It's getting there. It
is starting
really is
to get a
there.
little. Yes, the Preds. I mean, I've taken my son to a few Preds games, but it's like he said, it's getting there.
Well, a lot of it has to do with people moving from up north to the south. You know, I mean, there's stories of, you know, like with the Florida Panthers down like outside of Miami, and then the Arizona Coyotes and stuff. Like, you know, there's more people cheering for the away team than there is the home team.
That is true. We have a diverse group of people that are moving here to Nashville. There's a diverse group of people that live here in Nashville. We're a pretty popular city, so it seems like we're trying to get every sport, or at least most sports, involved here in Nashville. So it's becoming quite different.
Yeah. So I'll try and keep powering through some of this, because, you know, I really want Ms. Megan to get involved, and I also really enjoy that piece that you are going to go over as well, Josh. Okay. So I'll skip over all the political struggles with hockey in Charleston, as it felt like it would make a great column one day. But needless to say, I was finally able to play a competitive level of travel hockey. Continued to the junior ranks, which is U20. It's easy enough to equate it to semi-professional, but it's more of a purgatory from youth hockey to college and the professional level. At 19, I was invited to a professional tryout with the Richmond Renegades of the Southern Professional League. Played 3 games there and secured a contract to play at the second highest level in Slovakia for the 2011-2012 season. At this point, my life changed forever. I won't go into details because, again, it would make for an amazing story. However, in June of 2011, I was arrested, charged, and ultimately convicted of a crime I did not commit, and was covered up by the system where I was living and training in Minnesota. Having these pending charges, I had no choice but to withdraw from my contract. My life started to spiral downwards. In 2011, saw the loss of the captain of my junior team, several aunts, uncles, my grandfather, whom I was close to. These family members were all on my father's side, and I saw him, the strongest man I've ever known, nosedive into a deep depression. So just to kind of touch up on that, you know, again, it's something that I'm definitely going to write about one day, but you know, I was living in a kind of ritzy part of the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and my best friend was there with his girlfriend at the time, and my ex-girlfriend, and me and my ex-girlfriend got into a little argument over a tip that we left when we all went out to dinner. My best friend's ex-girlfriend, she was trying to hit on me and sleep with me in the weeks leading up to us going out to this, and I called her out on it, and so yeah, there was a lot of friction there. And so anyway, you know, me and my ex were arguing, and his ex-girlfriend calls the police and fabricates some story that I'm threatening people with a gun. And the cops responded with a lot of force. Obviously, they searched everything. There was no weapon because there was nothing that existed. Everything kind of went crazy, and they basically had to justify that they used that much, that much force. Because it can't just be for, you know, a disorderly conduct or whatever the case may be. Anyway, yeah, going into like Reader's Digest version. There was a lot of evidence that proved that all this was true. Somehow, some way, we ended up getting a different judge at one of the hearings. The prosecution failed to follow discovery orders and everything issued explicitly by a judge. When we tried to get it dismissed because of that, the judge denied the motion and then proceeded to grant their motion to suppress all of the evidence, including a false 911 call, breathalyzer tests, and a business card from one of the detectives that proved that he had a subsequent meeting with my ex-girlfriend. And they claimed that meeting never happened. So all of that was suppressed, and I was left with nothing. And then they basically said with a wink and a nod that they were going to file additional charges against me if I didn't take a plea deal. So I had no choice but to do that. We've all heard stories of, this type of stuff happening. Miss Megan, I know you're kind of from a small town.
Yes.
So, I'm pretty sure it's all about who the good old boys club.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that fall victim to stuff like this. So, Josh.
It happens.
Well, hey, look, I got to throw that to Miss Megan straight away because I haven't had any issues with the law, really. So, Miss Megan, you got anything? You have any run-ins with the law?
Never, not one time.
Me neither.
Well, I'm a lone soldier on this one. But, I mean, that, that to me led to...
I've had a lot of bad things happen to me. However, and I won't say that they weren't all my fault. That's not true. But I've never had any run-ins with the law. I mean, I've been to jail once, but that was because my ex-husband had called the police on me and said that I'd stolen our own vehicle, but that's for another day. So I spent 12 hours in jail for stealing my own car. But other than that, no. I haven't been in any trouble.
Yeah, it's such a significant, event in my life because it changed the trajectory of my life, in more ways than one. We talked about, spiritually, mentally, and everything like that. And that totally, I dealt with PTSD for a long time from that. When you got pretty much a SWAT team kicks in your front door and you're passed out completely, like sleeping in your bed, you have no idea what the hell's going on, and they got like machine guns, pointed at you, and you got lasers all over your chest, and they're in riot gear and everything like that. It's it's crazy. It really kind of, for me, the longest time, I even see a cop car or see lights, your body tenses up and you have a panic attack, there's, like I said, it really changed the trajectory of my life and kind of like where everything was going.
That's interesting. All right, buddy, you want to pick up where you left off?
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, I took a hobby of mine, music production and audio engineering, very seriously. Over the course of the next several years, I would throw shows across the country. I would end up becoming a booking agent for DJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia. I would party alongside Ryan Lewis, the DJ and producer for Macklemore. I'd fornicate with strippers in a dingy motel in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and have club owners try to kill me with free alcohol. I'd make some of the best friends of my life, and then I'd get stabbed in the back by others. In 2015, yet another story that deserves its own submission. I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I lost 100 pounds in a year. I was discharged from my probation early. I made phone calls and signed a contract to play professionally in the Netherlands, and I continued to play in Idaho, followed by 2 seasons in Bucharest, Romania. I became engaged. I had a kid, and that kid was kept from me until he was 3 months old after numerous family court appearances, and the custody battle is still ongoing. So, yeah, music just kind of took over that passion that hockey had. I made some, crazy connections in the craziest kind of ways. And, I always dabbled around with, making hip hop beats and doing things like that. Cause my brother, he's 13 years older than me. He kind of grew up in the, early 90s golden era, and he taught me how to do that. So that was always kind of like a passion, and it just led to bigger things. And, just kind of lived the party lifestyle on the road for a while. Admittedly breaking a lot of terms of my probation along the way, but But such is life. I got away with it, right? Then going to New Mexico. When I got to New Mexico in September 2015, I weighed 315 pounds. By the time I left for the Netherlands in first week of October in 2016, I weighed about 218 pounds. So, and that was, it just changed my life. And that's kind of why I fell in love with New Mexico. And that's why I live there today.
You've been all over the world, bud.
Yeah.
Everybody has that phase, right? That little party phase. But all I can say is maybe be thankful yours is as brief as it was, whereas mine lasted about a decade. As far as fornicating with strippers, Paul, I never fornicated with any strippers. All I can say is there was that bar or that strip joint right by our practice facility.
Yeah, by the Shiloh Inn.
And Chocolate, I don't know if that's her government name, but Chocolate wanted to take me to the back room, which I politely declined. You know why? Because I had a girlfriend. How about that?
Guy.
I will actually, that makes two of us. I've fornicated with some strippers, so I'll be with you.
Yeah. I remember when I was playing with a different team in that league after I got traded, guys would show up to the game the next day in our tracksuits, and they'd have like stardust all over them and everything, and sparkles and glitter, and it was a mess.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, it was great, but let's see, where are we at? In 2020, I made some savvy investments and saw an insane returns on the stock market rebound crash from the crash due to COVID-19 that enabled me to purchase land in New Mexico, and I've since returned and currently reside here. And that's the Reader's Digest version of my story. I have many blank pages left. As much shit as I've been through, it's crazy to think there's still so much more, so much to see, so much to do, and so much to accomplish. So who am I? I'm a father. I'm a fighter. I'm a lover. I'm kind. I'm generous. I'm caring. I'm intelligent. I'm ambitious. I'm a go-getter. I'm a cougher too, apparently. I'm stubborn. I'm motivated. And all that aside, I'm still a mystery, an enigma. The essence of who I am can and does change as I tackle each of life's obstacles. And the real question is this: who will I be? And that remains to be seen. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's a great ending, by the way.
Yes. This is kind of why I know when we first made contact about, well, both of you guys writing for the WYSBDotMe, I wanted this to be, there's no time frame on this. I just wanted it to be something that, you guys took your time with. And because what I've noticed from writing for the blog or the site is that people really take to personal stories and personal truths. They don't tend to take so much to what I think and what my opinion about stuff is. And, I didn't even realize how much time we could fill with just, this one introductory piece. But that's kind of the platform that I wanted for WYSB.me is that, people have stories, each one a little bit unique, but also the same in some regards. Obviously, Miss Megan and Paul have to share some similarities there. And so although they're different, very much the same, and we're not alone out here. And that's another one of the pillars of WYSB.me that I wanted to cultivate. So Paul, I thank you for sharing that.
Of course, and I really appreciate you letting me share my experiences, and especially Ms. Megan, you chiming in along the way. It really is great to hear people, kind of like Josh said, share those experiences and kind of, validate those struggles.
I agree.
All right. So again, Paul, thanks for sharing that. So, again, as I said, I didn't realize how much time we could spend on that. So, on the show format, I think, although I really want to get to Miss Paula's piece because she's so creative and so talented, with this piece that I wrote here, Giveth to Me, the Grief of the Woman in Black, I think what we're going to do, because I want to get into Miss Megan's, the real meaning of Megan, I'm just going to read this outright, and if you guys have any comments on it, comment on it, and then we'll move into Miss Megan's story. So This is something I wrote here. Giveth to me the grief of the woman in black. I saw it. I could have sworn I saw it. I know I saw it. I believe I saw it on Snapchat. She posted a picture of the man she loves proposing to her, and she said yes. I was over the moon for her. For a long stretch, I was very bitter towards her, but as time progressed, I became quite a fan of hers. All I wanted for her was to find somebody that could aid her in being happy, joyous, and free. It looked like she had found that. I'm certain I saw it. I'm so certain that for about 2 weeks now, I've been meaning to reach out and congratulate her. She really deserves it. Today, I went to her various social media pages to send my congratulations, but I saw nothing. There was no sight of any romantic proposal. Did I dream that she'd become engaged, or did something happen in the meantime? Oh no, something must have happened. I know what I saw. She appeared to me in a dream last night. Her, my first love, the woman in black. It was a very short dream. Our interaction with each other was very brief. We were very close to each other, almost in an embrace, but no words were spoken. We just sort of somberly stared. Normally, she has longer hair, but it was cut short right above her shoulders. The way she had her bangs done covered one of her eyes. As noted, she was dressed in all black. She was dressed the way a widow would dress, but I knew she was no widow. She looked beautiful. I always thought she did. Doesn't it seem like God's hand drips this golden sparkle upon some people's skin as a finishing touch? I remember thinking that whenever I looked at her back then. However, despite her beauty, she was visibly upset. She was always a little tougher than I, though. No tears came, as she would never let me, or perhaps any man, see a single tear drop from her eye. It was as though she was grieving something. On the other hand, there was me, also upset, but I wasn't handling it as well as she was. I was sobbing, without an idea as to why. Even when I eventually woke up, I hadn't a clue as to why I was in such a state of sadness. At the end of the dream, she grabbed my sleeves and pulled them down as if to say, straighten up. She took one last glance at me and walked away. I can't say this with any certainty, but I remember thinking in the dream that she was walking back somewhere, perhaps to someone that she did not wish to return to. I've been thinking constantly about why I was sobbing like such a little baby. There are surface-level reasons that I've considered, but I have done away with them. I thought maybe it was because I'm grieving the loss of a relationship myself. Maybe it was due to some it-could-have-been-me complex. Not with her, no, but with the last one. Here was my first love, about to tie the knot, and here I am still searching for something that might still be there, or something resembling a new beginning. In whatever position I find myself in, it is bittersweet to see people I love and care about doing the damn thing. Every day, it seems one of my family members or friends is on their way to starting a family of their own. But that's okay, you know. By far and away, it brings me more joy than it does self-pity. Besides, there are people out there who have it way worse than, oh, me and my little petty problems that I think I have. Get over yourself, Josh. What gives you the right to hop on your little website and type about suffering when all you know is a breakup and there is somebody out there who you care about who, possibly, had the rug of holy matrimony ripped right out from under them? Please tell me this is not what happened. No, I dreamt her engagement. I must have. Fucking hell, I have no idea. Somebody had me do a sort of meditation exercise a couple years ago. I remember it clearly. They asked me to close my eyes and think about all the guilt and shame that I had. They had me try to deeply feel the pain and remorse that I had for my prior behavior. Then they had me think of that guilt, shame, pain, and remorse as something that could just be lifted right out of me, but that it had to go somewhere. It had to go to someone. He asked me how I would feel if that ball of negativity was to be transferred into somebody that I loved and if they had to deal with that. The response was immediate. No, absolutely not. Give it back to me. I will keep my problems. Whatever you do, do not give it to them. And lastly, I have no idea if the woman in black is in pain or not. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was reality. What I do know is that if she is suffering that I don't want her to, maybe that's why I was so inconsolable in the dream. I would gladly take any potential suffering out of her if I could. There's the answer right there, isn't it? Is it not true that we would rather suffer ourselves than to see the ones we care for suffering? Now, we aren't Jesus. That isn't what I'm suggesting. But to think that somebody could and would lift the suffering out of you and put it on themselves, how grateful will we be to them? We are all in this together, aren't we? Myself and the stupid problems that myself thinks it has be damned. I like to think that I coined this phrase about Buddhism. Buddhism is telling yourself to go fuck itself. This is another parallel between Jesus and Gautama, but we needn't get into that again. They say to be careful what you pray for. I've experienced exactly why they say that on more than one occasion, but I never learned. I'm going to risk it. I've never seen a point spread that I didn't like anyway. Tonight, I pray a simple prayer, Father. If indeed she is suffering, give us to me the grief of the woman in black. So, I guess I want to throw this one thing out there, and I'll turn it over to whoever, if anybody has any comments. But I remember when I was deep in alcoholism, and I would wake up in the morning hungover, I would look in the mirror and go, wow, what would the woman in black think of you right now in this state? And, although I had a ways to go before the light came on, I do remember thinking that. And, today I guess I'm just grateful that maybe, not even just her, but people's opinions or beliefs about me could have the possibility to change now. And also for myself, I have an opportunity to think differently and believe differently in myself than I would ever have before. So thanks for letting me share. If anybody's got anything, have at it.
So in your last paragraph, I really enjoyed it. It said, when you stated, maybe that's why I was so inconsolable in the dream, I would gladly take any potential suffering out of her if I could. There is the right answer, isn't it? Isn't it not true that you would rather suffer ourselves than to see anyone else suffer? That I struggle with every single day. I would so much rather take the pain out of anybody else, and not necessarily because I am a people pleaser, but to specific people. I'm not a people pleaser just to have like a codependent personality, but rather because I'm a very empathetic person. And in order to be empathetic, you must take on the feelings of the sufferings of others. That is the definition for empathy. Be able to, put yourself in one's shoes. So anyone who's empathetic can probably know that feeling more than anything. But rather, I think, I always question myself, how did God really, how could he turn the cheek just to save a sorry soul like mine? I think about that a lot. And I know why, but that's a question that I ask myself quite often. But I like it. I liked your last paragraph, Josh.
Yeah, and I think, part of, I think the first thing that really, kind of stuck out to me though is that, you kind of validate in like a kind of roundabout way, you validate the feelings that you had for this girl, and as we get older, and we can reflect on, certain relationships that we've had, right, that, where we went wrong, and how we can like really like take that, deep look inside of ourselves and figure out how to become better people, based off of the mistakes that we made. And I think that, whether, she was engaged or not, right, that to you kind of would have validated those feelings because you wanted her to be happy. And at one point you wanted to be the one that made her that happy. But at the end of the day is like that dream, whether it was a daydream or a dream at night or whatever it may be, I think that kind of, that validates those feelings. And again, kind of that introspective of, like where things went wrong, and which is kind of where, I think one of the huge, premises of religion, right, is we try to be more Christ-like, right, and every day. And I think that that's kind of, where you end this is, even though it's not your responsibility to bear this pain, is that you still want to, and for good reason. So that's the way I see it. I'm not sure if either of you guys would agree or if that was your intention, Josh.
Yeah, well, I think that you guys kind of both hit on it, and it's something like, as you said, Paul, being Christ-like, and as Miss Megan says, trying to be empathetic, and how Christ would turn the other cheek just to save a sorry soul like mine. You know what? It's what the spiritual process is, right? Is trying to emulate, the person who embodies. We're trying to emulate Jesus Christ to the best of our ability. Now, again, it's not a religious podcast. You believe whatever you want to believe. But let's just say, okay, for example, even in meditation, I try to emulate the Gautama the Buddha because he's like the face of meditation, right? But with Jesus, it's something else. It's spiritual principles, being loving, gentle, kind, humble, all these things. And again, as we touched on at the top of the show, it's something about taking on the sins of the world that, I think that maybe that's what a little bit of what that dream was, and trying to emulate that, and I guess caring about others. And yes, as far as the validation thing, I think you happen to be right about that too, Paul. Is when it's funny, I do have an update on the Woman in Black, although I'm not sure I'm allowed to say. But yes, if you ask me if I could have an engagement, like if I could be married to somebody right now, but that it meant that she wouldn't be, there's no way I say yes to that. So I think that's probably what the dream meant. Not so much about what I can get out of life, but it's about seeing other people thrive and succeed. And I was very happy to see, even if in a dream, her succeed. So, thanks for letting me share, guys.
Well, of course. And before Miss Megan gets going on her story, I just want to go ahead and apologize for taking up the first 30, 40 minutes of the podcast. Obviously, like Josh said, I don't think that any of us realize how deep this could get. So.
No, it's all right. I mean, this is why we schedule it for an hour and a half, so at least we do have some time. But, with no further ado, up next, WYSB presents Megan Moore, The Real Meaning of Megan. So, Miss Megan, you want to read to us your little piece there?
I will, and I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible. If you guys have any questions along the way, or if you'd like me to read it paragraph by paragraph like Paul did, I'd be more than welcome to do so. So if you would have asked me 5 years ago what I thought about being real meant, I probably would have proudly told you that I got the word real tattooed on my inner left wrist to match the tattoo that my husband has on his right shoulder. It was definitely real. It was real stupid. Today, if I were asked what being real means, I would tell you something totally different. Simply tell you the truth. I would suggest you to get comfortable, grab a glass of wine or coffee, and allow me to just be real with you. In my opinion, being real means experiencing life's gifts to their fullest. I say that now. However, I spent most of my 20s taking them for granted. I lost custody of the most precious gift that God has given me. My son, Skylar, who is now 11, was taken from me on November the 1st, 2016. I took that gift for granted, and now someone else is experiencing my life's gifts, but that was all my fault. I was too occupied with getting high and trying to comfort everyone else's besides my son's. I have learned to forgive others as well as myself since that day, and I became a little more real when I reminded myself that I was experiencing one of God's greatest gifts, forgiveness. Becoming real was not easy. If I fell 10 times, I had to get back up 11. Resilience and strength are requirements for being real. Despite the pains of loss, I eventually learned to enjoy the closeness, connection, and intimacy with others. I gained the strength and stamina to get up every day with a hopeful heart and a compassionate attitude. I found the courage to be vulnerable, and in turn, I was given the freedom to love myself again. I can now tolerate my life's discomforts and ambiguities because I am strong enough to embrace the good and the bad, the black, white, and grays of every situation. I became a little bit more real when I experienced the full spectrum of human emotion. Arduous emotions have enriched my life in many ways that I couldn't have imagined, and the path to getting what I wanted ran right through them. I tried to avoid them, but this avoidance only led me astray. Feeling anger, rage, hate, or mistrust did not cause me to be abnormal, ill, or damaged. It made me real. Uncertain emotions are innate and inevitable parts of my life. If I'm willing to put in the work and go for the fulfillment of true achievements, then I have to be able to fail. My biggest fear in life has always been unfulfilled potential. I'm not always going to meet the expectations of others. There'll be humiliation, depression, and anger, because there has to be. In order to succeed in clearly formulating what is very much alive in myself, I often needed to search out my unconscious conditionings. If I were to avoid painful feelings, events, and situations, I would have to live the rest of my life with the sinking feeling or understanding that I never tested myself to see how much I could have accomplished in my life. So these days, I'm moving at God's speed, and I've been trying my hardest and praying that he takes it easy on me. Who am I? My name is Megan, and I'm real.
I think that's a phenomenal piece. I think that it's not even that it's just so open. I just think that just the succinct nature of it, like how everything is, like it's not sugar coated. It's right there. It's on the table. I think that you tackled a lot of real issues. No pun intended. That I think a lot of people deal with, and and like you said, that rebound, that getting up an 11th time, that's something that that takes a lot of courage, to be able to keep doing that.
Well, thank you.
Miss Megan, my son Skylar, who is now 11, was taken from me on November 1st, 2016. I took that gift for granted, and now someone else is experiencing my life's gift. You feel the pain in that line, and I don't know. Do you want to walk us through that, because that's a crucial line in that little article?
So that line, I feel, and it's funny that you say that, because you said that it was felt, and that's something that I feel every single day, something I deal with every single day, from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. It's a pain. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's called ambiguous loss, but it's the loss of someone who is still living. My son is taken, or his dad took custody of him, and he is remarried now, and he has a stepmother, and basically there is another woman, in his life, which we get along, but that woman is basically reaping what I sowed. And not in a bad way. She's getting to experience my life's blessing every day. She gets to experience every first that he's had ever since he was 5. It's something I have to live with. It's something I have to deal with. Being a non-custodial mother is the hardest thing, especially societal-wise. People judge you from a bad standpoint. It's very frowned upon with, at least in America's societal norms. We are really frowned upon. And most of the time, I just don't even tell people. Would rather not tell people I even have children, because it's too hard to explain why I don't have my son, but every other weekend. For a really bad, it happened in a really bad way. That's for another piece, but that one line is it's crazy. You said it was felt, because that's what I feel every single day, every single second of every single day, and it doesn't go away.
Yeah. Paul, I'm sure you have experience with that. Something like akin to that.
Yeah, in a similar, I think as far as, touching up on the ambiguous loss, right? I feel like that's kind of, I can't equate it, it's this, I don't want to say it's the same, but it's separate, right? My son's mother, there was no doubt in my life that, that was my soulmate. That was who I was meant to be with, and it's like nowadays, it's like I don't even know who the hell you are anymore. It's like, this is not the person that I've met. So it's like, you kind of hold on to this hope almost, where like, you're still very much in love with this person, but it's not the same person. Like that old person, that other person like died and is gone, so to some degree, I kind of understand that, what she's saying. And I 100% agree with what she's saying about society's, perception of mothers that don't have custody of their children, because as a single father, I'm also a non-custodial parent, and I know how hard that I have to fight just against the system, because it seems like as a father, you have to, I was paying $500 per week in child support for backdated to August, and then for 3 weeks after a judgment in court, before I even got to meet my son for the first time in the flesh. So to put that into perspective, it was roughly $6,000 in child support that was having to be paid before I was even granted visitation rights. And so, to see how much I have to go through, and how much kind of like how difficult it is, and everybody just kind of knows that, like, oh well, if you're a father, you're going against the system, and that the mother always gets custody. And then to see, like, well, how did you lose custody? I mean, obviously everybody's got their own story, and you shouldn't pass judgment on anybody, because we all go through different things in life, and what may have caused Miss Megan to go through that at one point doesn't mean that's who she is now, or that she hasn't figured that part out. But again, like she said, a lot of times it's just easier to, you just want to pretend like it's like it's not even an issue, because having to explain yourself over and over is, it's humiliating, but it's also, it's like you don't need people judging you, because they're not in your shoes, and most people would rather judge instead of be understanding. But that's my perspective, and I'm sorry if I crossed any boundaries there.
No, that's very true. It's so true. You're exactly on point with that. It's easier to just say that you don't have children rather than have to explain yourself, because you're exactly right about the judging. They will judge you from that, not even knowing your story, and they don't want to know your story because of societal norms on the non-custodial mothers. Anyone who has doesn't have custody, or any mother that doesn't have custody of her children must be a bad mom, and that was actually really totally not the case. It's kind of unfortunate in my event, but I will reiterate on that later. But yes, it's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through, but it's made me a stronger person.
Well, absolutely, and I think that it's supremely important, for excuse me, supremely important for you to make the most of the time that you guys do have together, and when he's older and he's old enough to understand, like that's that's the time to have that discussion. In the meantime, and I think it's something that plagues our society right now, especially in split households, right? Is
correct.
That oftentimes you get parents bad-mouthing one another. I mean, and even to this day, I mean, my parents have like an amicable relationship. They basically only talk when it pertains to me or my younger brother. But the thing is that there's always a little underlying of animosity from each side, and I'll tell both of them anytime that it comes up. Look, I don't want to hear it. Like, that's between y'all. Like, that's your issue. It's not mine. My relationship with each of you guys is different. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what people try to preach, in family counseling, or in court cases and stuff, when they make judgments. Like, actually, our lawyers, when we had our custody agreement finalized, put it in explicit writing that we will always remember to let the child know that we love them more than we hate each other. Like, that was explicitly in the writing. And like I said, I think as long as you and your ex-husband are doing the right thing and not bad-mouthing one another, at the end of the day, when he's old enough and has the cognitive ability to understand how things were, obviously right now at 11, that's not, 18 is probably, a good time for that. But,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I preached that to my son. He has come home a few times, just telling me what his dad or his new stepmom has said about me. And I said, well, son, you just got to overlook that. And he's asked me, well, do you not like Dad? And I said, no, of course I love your dad. I'll always love your dad. And I've never once said anything bad about his father or his stepmom, for that matter, in front of him or to him. It's just not. It's not about them and I. It's about he and I. So I've really had to reiterate and change my way of thinking since the tables have turned, because he was in my custody until he was 5. So. And he has no bad memories of being with me. His dad told me I'm his favorite parent, which he just loves being with me. But of course he does. I'm his mom. It's hard for a kid to be stripped of their mom.
100%.
And you can understand that.
100%, you know, and it's,
Yeah.
and go ahead.
I'm just going to, with just a little bit of time left, I want to get to one little thing here in Miss Megan's piece that I also felt. You know, and one of Miss Megan's latest pieces, she talks about, you know, God preparing a writer, and one of the things that he needs his writer to do is to have people feel. And, well, I think Miss Megan does a good job of doing that. And one of the other lines that I really truly felt, if I am willing to put in the work and go for the fulfillment of true achievements, then I have to be able to fail, which is an important distinction. I have to be able to fail if I want the fulfillment of true achievements, right? But also here, my biggest fear in life has always been unfulfilled potential, which happens to be one of my biggest fears as well. And it's something like, goodness, you know, especially for writers, we tend to be creative, which means there's a lot of different directions we can go. But with something like, goodness, I could be anything, but I'm not anything. And here, time is ticking. It's very much, you know, the crocodile and the clock in the story of Peter Pan. Time will eat us if I don't get my shit together and risk failure and become willing to fail, so that I can actually see the reality of my potential become fulfilled. So I felt that, Miss Megan. I want to get you know, your expanded thoughts on that.
Yes, that actually is my biggest fear. It always has been my biggest fear, is unfulfilled potential. Even I was the valedictorian of my high school class. And to reiterate on failures, I had to notice that I had to fail multiple times and be able to get back up in order to succeed. Nobody becomes a master of anything without failing. I don't care who you are. You know, I mean, none of you guys got good at hockey without, you know, first putting on ice skate and learning how to do
Paul
it
never
and
got
falling. Maybe not. He's like Jesus on ice.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yes,
Far from it.
It just always has been. I feel that what happened to me with my son, it knocked me down for a really long time, put me in a very bad place. And there's some days, you know, I might have made a joke about the introduction of mine. However, most days are pretty bad for me. I would say I've lied about a 7. I'm probably a 3 most days, to be quite honest. And that's just because of what I'm dealing with. It's funny you stated this, the little piece from the book you read about everyone being a 7. And that's just because probably, I will be honest, that they're probably lying. I will say that, or at least in my opinion. But the unfulfilled potential is I see myself going, I'm an artist as well. I can see myself doing so many things, but yet I haven't done them yet. Or people don't see me for who I am. And they definitely don't see me for who I am now because of my past. It's scary not knowing what I can do and not doing it is what pisses me off more than anything, I think. Is knowing how smart I am and how willing or motivated I am to do it. But however, I still get up in the morning and I'm like, you know, I'm just too tired or too depressed. There's always an excuse, it seems. And I just wish I could kind of like barrel around those excuses and just do it.
I totally understand. The quote is, you know, when people talk about regrets, the biggest regrets in life are not of the things that we did, but rather the things that we did not do. So I completely understand what you're saying about just doing them. Pick a lane and going for it. But Paul, you got anything on unfulfilled potential with 8:40 left?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that potential is kind of the only limit to potential is what's in your mind. You know, I think that, you know, obviously, you know, we have physical limitations, right? So there becomes a time, unless you're a guy like, you know, Jaromir Jagr or Tom Brady, where your body just eventually fails you. You know, so obviously sports and things like that, you're going to reach a point where, you know, where we're simply mortal, right? Like you're going to reach that point of finality. But as far as your education and, you know, self-awareness, you know, treating people, you know, others, success in your career, that's unlimited potential. And there's no way you can peak out, I feel like, you're always capable of learning new things. You're always, capable of improving yourself, becoming more emotionally aware, that's one of those things. It's why, it's healthy to go to therapy, even if, you're not depressed or anything like that, because, there's nothing wrong with not understanding your emotions and understanding the emotions of others and becoming more emotionally, intellectually intelligent and whatnot, and to actually understand the problems that are in your life. And it could be stupid problems like, oh, why do I feel like I don't have enough time in the day? Maybe you can help organize things in your life and, to get the maximum amount of time to yourself. I mean, there's so many different things as far as like career potential and everything like that. I just think as long as people put in the effort, there's no substitute for hard work. And that's not just, losing weight, playing sports or anything else like that. Is you have to actually put in the work. You can't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and then just expect it to fall in your lap. That's not how life works. So I feel like everybody's their own key holder when it comes to potential, and it's just, you get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah. Yeah, hard to argue that, Mr. Paul. Yeah. All right, guys, so let's see. With 6 minutes left, you guys have any closing comments before we wrap up the show?
Megan, lead the way.
I really don't have any closing comments besides I've enjoyed being on the podcast itself and reiterating the stories and breaking them down into a more deeper tone. Paul and you as well, Josh, you guys are probably the most, I guess, emotionally intellectual people or men that I've spoke to in a really long time. It's really hard to find someone who is vulnerable enough, especially from the male standpoint, to speak in this manner. And it's comforting to know that there are other men that actually do speak about their feelings and things of that nature to others. It's just rare.
Hey.
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off of that a little bit. Especially, with your unique, excuse me, your unique circumstance. It's extremely brave of you to put yourself out there like that. And at the end of the day, I think it's important to realize, we only have to answer to ourselves and answer to God, and I think that, like you said, there aren't, even as a male, there's not enough guys out there that are willing to kind of tell all or to really open up their heart and their minds. That's kind of, when people talk about toxic masculinity, I really believe that's what it's about, is it's like, you can't always just suck it up and, be tough. And, it's important, and it's important to normalize that, especially like males, we have feelings too. It's cool to give your friends hugs and everything like that. It's okay to cry, all that stuff. I think that, especially just knowing the content that's on the website, and the stories that people are sharing, I think that not just from male female perspective, I think that this is something that's really going to benefit a lot of people, just understanding the multitude of things that happen in life and how we can better ourselves by living through the experiences of others.
Hey, Paul, did you accidentally misspeak? And when you tried to say you can't always suck it up, did you say you can't always suck it off?
I mean, you can.
Certainly can't, my friend.
But you haven't changed. You know that? You haven't changed.
Almost an hour and a half into the podcast, I think all the kids are in bed, so that's all right. That'll fly.
It's going to cost you an extra $40 though, okay?
All right. Yeah, I guess I'll throw in a little closing comment too, and kind of as what Paul said about, you mentioned toxic masculinity. And I've been thinking about this. I think I've tweeted it a couple of times that the people talking about toxic masculinity have no idea what it's about or who it affects. And, yeah, you know, I mean, part of that may be growing up in hockey locker rooms and stuff like that, where all you do is insult people. But you know what? As far as talking about feelings, I'm 32 years old. You know, what do I care? This is how I feel. Suck one, you know? But anyway, well, thank you everybody for listening to the WYSB or WYSP podcast. It was a pleasure to have my friends Miss Megan Moore and Mr. Paul Blase on. We're going to do this every week, every Monday, I think. So until then, we'll see you guys again. Thanks for listening.